Commence primary ignition.
Hello there, it's Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're watching the Virtual Cantina Network. Ooh. Is there a blue milk around? Can I get something? I'm in a cantina after all. Goodbye there.
Hello there. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Virtual Cantina Virtual News Desk for Star Wars Celebration 2025. I'm Mark Von Olin, and I am joined by our co-host from Blob of the Hut, Gary O'Toole. Welcome, Gary.
Hello, everybody. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, Mark. Belated.
Happy New Year. I'm so excited to see you again.
Long time.
It has been, even though we chat every now and then in the Facebook, it's different being on screen and being able to talk with everyone from the VCN fam. I can't believe it's basically been a year since we did this for London, getting ready for Celebration, and so now here we are. It's a whole new year and another lead up to Celebration. It just flew by.
Yeah, it went super quick, and I think that's what the build-up for Celebration is going to be like. Maybe we'll say within the next couple of weeks, if our timelines are right, we're going to see announcements start to come thick and fast.
Yeah, that's what we're expecting as well, and it's why we have our little countdown clock over here. 104 days to go until Star Wars Celebration 2025. So within that time period, the Virtual Cantina, which should be your premier destination for all things Star Wars Celebration related news, we're going to keep you up to date both on the Facebook page and here in our show on alternating Saturdays with all the big news. So this first episode, we're going to talk a little bit about what's been revealed so far. There's not a ton. So we're also going to make some of our own predictions as well. But before we get into that, we wanted to talk a little bit about 2024 and how the year ended and everything. So Gary, tell us about your New Year's. And you missed the New Year's Day show that we did on January 1st. So I'd love to get your take on like what was your favorite project from 2024 within Star Wars.
Well, 2024 was a particularly busy year with the industry I work in. Sort of things are always on the go, and especially picking up still post-pandemic, things are getting back to normal levels. But yeah, 2024 I think was a little bit of a crazy year for Star Wars. I think the big anticipation for everybody was Skeleton Crew. And thankfully, it seems to be hitting it out of the park. I've not caught up on all the episodes that I've been so busy, but I am getting there. But that is something that I am really looking forward to getting stuck into. Hasn't all been positive from the Star Wars side. I think the fallout from sort of what's gone on with the Acolyte is still lingering, which you'd think at this time it would just go away. But you know, unfortunately, it is what it is. At the end of the day, we are in a fandom that is currently quite divided, and you know, you either love projects or you hate them. But a particular highlight for me, and I think this is something that you share in Mark, we are both the proud owners of the HasLab Ghost, which is absolutely incredible. So I'm really looking forward to getting stuck into that more. But if I was picking a favorite moment from 2024 was that I finally got to go stateside for a little bit of a break, but a particular highlight that was a surprise was for my birthday, I actually got to go to Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam for a spot of plane spotting. Anne-Marie surprised me with that for my birthday, yeah, so that was really, really nice. That was completely unexpected, so I'd have to maybe say that goes down as my favorite moment of 2024 for sure.
That's amazing. That's very, very cool. It's interesting the number of aviation employees and enthusiasts overlapping with Star Wars. Like it's quite the Venn diagram, and it makes
Yeah.
sense. People love the ships. People love to fly.
Yeah.
Luke Skywalker is one of the best pilots. So is Han Solo, and those characters are some of the most beloved. So it's no surprise that
Mhm.
there's this big contingent of guys who want to take to the sky. So yeah, all right. Clarify your qualifications for flying. Like, what kind of plane?
So I'm not involved with that. I work for the national government organization which controls air travel in our
Gotcha.
country. So whether it's
So you don't have your
everything.
pilot's license.
No, I never did my
Okay,
PPL. If you've seen the cost of doing a PPL, you there people would know
I'm aware.
it's pretty insane. Yeah,
One of my fraternity brothers did, and he spent a small fortune, and he can fly a plane about the size of my living room.
something
And
like a
that's
little
you
Cessna.
can barely get inside of it, right? So it's like
Yeah,
as the smallest version. And I was like, well, what does it take to become like an aviation pilot for something that's like a commercial jet or something? And it's like you have to like sit there and observe for years and wait until you finally get like you have to wait for some other pilot to die to before you finally get put
yeah,
behind the wheel. Basically, it's crazy. But the
yeah.
amount of thankfully, there's a ton of training.
It's one of the most regulated industries in the world. I mean, constant upskilling, constant training. Obviously, health and safety is
mhm.
paramount. Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's an interesting industry. It's a fun industry, but it just never stops.
Oh, I'm sure. And now that everything is packages being delivered, I read somewhere that like pilots who deliver packages like outnumber the consumers traveling via air because we ship so much stuff via UPS and
Yeah,
FedEx and the post office and everything else, like more than ever, because individual consumer packages are now a huge part of cargo as opposed to it used to be shipping to stores, which that we still do, and we still do that by like rail and everything
mhm.
else. But now individual people are ordering from Amazon, and it's got to be there today, tomorrow. It's
And
crazy.
that's the thing. When people think of airlines, they think of maybe Delta, United, Etihad.
Hmm.
They never think of FedEx or
Hmm.
DHL that actually have their own fleets of cargo aircraft that deliver all around the world. But yeah, it never stops, as I said, and it's no surprise, as you said, to see the overlap with enthusiasts versus qualified pilots, whatever the case may be.
Oh yeah, that'll be a good cosplay interaction. I want to see a UPS driver in like the orange jumpsuit, but brown with the patch and everything.
Yeah,
Who's ever listening, someone get on that. I like a good cosplay mashup.
yeah,
Um, with that in mind, I do think there's going to be some amazing cosplay at Celebration, and I think we can thinking of like the content that's out there right now, Skeleton Crew. I think people are going to jump on those pirates and the droids and everything, and start working on that. The kids are really the focus of the show, but there are some really interesting character designs in there, and I'm waiting for this stuff to start hitting the con circuit to see how people are going to start interpreting all of the villains from the show, because I think there's some of the coolest designs. We have so many aliens to pull from. For the first time in a while, there's like a lot of aliens on my screen.
yeah. There seems to have been a lot, and there's a lot of creative freedom to move around as well. And I'll be curious to see what the likes of the droid builders and things like that do. But we have Dublin Comic Con coming up now in a couple of months, so it's going to be really interesting to see what people come up with. People are always so creative, whether it's a generic costume that they've put together or whether it's a professional prop builder or somebody who's a hardcore cosplayer. I'm sure there will be a lot of different options out there for people. But also, I think you're going to see a lot of people hop on Neil Nation.
Hmm.
That seems to be a big one. Neil seems to have gone down well with a lot of people. So long may that continue.
Yeah, I think Neil is the breakout in terms of everyone's sort of not just favorite character, but yeah, the sort of rallying cry of the show. Now, I'm of the age that Goonies was a thing when I was a kid. I was sort of the perfect age for Goonies. I think they came out in like 86, 87. I was 5 or whatever it was. So I was a young enough kid that those kids seem older to me and a little bit aspirational. And now I'm the age where I was like, oh, I remember that from when I was a kid. Like this feels like Goonies meets E.T., that whole Amblin adventure of like the on the cusp of feeling like you're an adult, but there's no way they're tweens, right? And they're figuring out like these are their formative years basically. So I'm watching it now through the lens of like that could have been me 30 something years
Yeah,
ago. And oh man, is it fun? Like I'm just having a really fun time with Skeleton Crew, and I don't care where it goes or what it ladders up to or whatever. It's just like a really fun adventure set in this universe, and I think they're nailing that.
Yeah, I think Skeleton Crew really has been a big surprise. And you're mentioning Goonies. It is effectively Goonies in space, and we've
Hmm.
seen so many Easter eggs and little tidbits to it. I mean, SM33, if ever there was a pirate reference,
Hmm.
there's one. And obviously the one eye makes me think a little bit of One-Eyed Willie.
Oh,
So
without a doubt. And don't touch
there's
anything. Yeah,
no.
they're like, don't touch the treasure. Yeah, there's so many little things like that. Yeah.
And I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If this formula is working, continue with that.
Hmm.
And I haven't seen the latest episode, but I understand there's a little is a little bit of a Phil Tippett influence. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, there's a lot of puppeting and a lot of creature stuff. And more importantly, I think in this episode, there's finally a moment to breathe.
Hmm.
I won't give any spoilers away, but we do have some moments where the characters split for a second and you get different combinations of characters on screen where they can talk to each other and express some of the emotional depth that we know is there, but
Yep.
often gets lost if you're just doing big action sets, right? So this is definitely a moment to breathe kind of episode, because we're spending our second episode now on the planet that has the spa, right? And so the adventure continues after they all went down the water slide at the end of the last episode, to escape the treasure room. So now it's like the consequences of what happened last episode after Jude Law um, made his not so surprised villain twist, right? Yeah, we all saw that. It's like, what is it? Curse your inevitable betrayal, right? From Firefly. It was like straight out of that. Your sudden but inevitable betrayal. Like that's exactly what happened. And so now we're dealing with what happens next for these kids, and they're a scrappy little bunch, and we're all rooting for them. And I think, it is still Star Wars. I don't think they're going to kill any kids, but that does seem like they're in constant peril. Like these poor children just keep running into walls at like every turn.
And it begs the question: what else is in store, and what can they build on with this project?
Hmm. Yeah, I think there's an interesting world out there, right? Like this is the first time we've seen, in a while, probably since the Clone Wars, like a planet that's really isolated from everything else that's going on in the galaxy, and they seem to be even more isolated than, say, like a neutral planet during the Clone Wars time period, right? It's one thing to be neutral during a war and sort of not pay attention to what's going on. These people are like potentially in a completely different time frame. It actually makes me think of the horror movie The Village, where they all think they're in the 1800s, and it's like. So spoiler from a movie 20 years ago, from M. Night Shyamalan, but the big twist is that like they were in present day the whole time. Like, so these kids are living that. They've got their little Republic credits like it's their lunch money. Um, and the old Republic doesn't exist anymore. And by the way, there is like a not new trilogy, an original trilogy reference that pops up that they think is something very, very, very new, that feels incredibly anachronistic to them, that we'd be like, huh? But like it's perfect. It perfectly encapsulates like just how sheltered and in a bubble, like truly a bubble that they really are, these kids, and they're the whole planet.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating concept that they've
Mhm.
come up with. And was it last week? I had actually seen a thread that raised an interesting question. Whose perspective of this? Whose perspective are we seeing this story through the eyes of?
Mhm.
Which, there's been so many twists and turns, and there's so many different avenues that this could go down. It's it's open to a lot of interpretation. I think that's one thing that's been brilliant about it, has been that somebody watches one episode and they talk to somebody else about it and they take away something completely different. And I think it's genuinely been a home run in that respect.
Yeah, the nice thing is it's hard to find people online hating it, so that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And I think with that in mind, like with Celebration coming up in a matter of 104 days, how do we? I can't find a point. There we go. 104 days. How do we get either these kids or someone else from Skeleton Crew, Jude Law or whoever, to be a guest at Celebration to have a panel? Would they have the kids available for autographing and photo ops? It goes. Lucasfilm doesn't love that, and fine. Um, but I think there are going to be a lot of people attending the show in Japan who want to meet this cast, who
Yeah.
certainly want to attend a panel. Uh, and I think Lucasfilm has had enough experience now dealing with fandoms to figure out how to keep the kids safe
Yeah.
and in a place where the fans can interact with them in a positive way.
Well, you've hit the nail on the head for me for something that I think is going to come up. I think in terms of what people are going to be looking forward to see, there surely has to be a creature feature slash puppeteer
Mm,
panel of some sort. Surely there has to be. If ever there
please.
was a time, if ever there was a time to do it, it would be this.
Yep.
The guest list is looking a bit scarce at the moment.
hmm do you want to go through it real quick?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so for everyone tuning in, so far Lucasfilm has only announced 9 guests for Star Wars Celebration Japan. I think that number will about triple. I think you'll get to about 30. And I think anything beyond that is too much because it's only a 3-day show. I think that they're not going to do those after-hour events like they did in Anaheim. I think that was a lot of like making up for like not having had an event in a while and wanting to go as big and broad as possible. Also, with all the COVID restrictions, it was really hard to schedule. But you can't expect 50 guests. So I
No.
think 25 to 30 is probably the sweet spot. And if they said they were clocking in at 20, we're halfway there on the guest list, basically.
Yeah.
But I think we're about a third of the way through. They have it listed on the website alphabetically. Let's go in that same order, and we'll talk a little bit about the guest. And by the way, Celebrating Autographs will be back in February with deeper dives on all of these people. But we're going to just sort of cover it top line. First one up, Alan Tudyk, K2SO. I already made my first Firefly reference a little bit earlier. I'm a big fan of his. He's obviously excellent in Rogue One, and he should be coming into Andor season 2.
Season 2, yeah. So I think that's where that's leading. That's the start of the breadcrumbs for what will no doubt be a panel or perhaps a full reveal of some sort. Maybe first, if I was making a prediction, maybe people get to see the first or second episode, something like that, maybe.
I would think so. I think, like, given the timing, you have to put up the first 2 of Andor, make it a special event after hours. People get like lottery tickets for it. People camp out. They don't like people camping out anymore, but like safety concerns, et cetera, et cetera. But I feel like there's a way to do that after hours to invite a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll get the origin story of K2SO in theory. And Diego Luna is also on this list, so you could finally start getting things dual signed with Alan and Diego, since he's been very elusive over the past, almost 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Alan, I think is a great one. He's also a big Disney guy. Like, he's the voice of King Candy in the Wreck-It Ralph movie. Like, he does voices everywhere. That man's IMDb is gigantic, and of course, I just love him from Firefly and Serenity.
He could do anything.
Yeah, spectacular. So good. We're starting off strong. And
Yep.
he hits Rogue One and Andor. So 2 streams, one movie, 1 streaming series. Next up is Anthony Daniels.
That's one that if you're looking to fill in some gaps on your posters or your comics, that's a pretty good signature to get as well. That makes me think there's going to be something maybe more angled towards an OT or a PT panel of some sort. Although I wouldn't be surprised to see if his involvement is announced with one of the new trilogy movies coming up. That would be where I would be perhaps leaning towards.
We have very few original trilogy actors still doing the circuit at this point, and unfortunately, we've also lost a few people this year in that space. I mean, James Earl Jones just passed away pretty recently. Angus McGinnis, who we neglected to mention earlier in the week. Our gold leader. Unfortunately, just recently passed away. So it is slim pickings on the original trilogy front. He is one of the originals from 1977. There are a lot of other droid workers now, not the least of which is Chris Bartlett, who has played C-3PO and lots of other protocol droids. We have numerous people in this space. So I think if we're starting a new stream of movies, shows, etc., you kind of go with one of those younger guys. And someone who we can pass the torch to. But Anthony will sign anything from original trilogy. He's also in all the prequels and all of the new trilogy movies. And I think he's got that cameo in Rogue One. So he's in 10 movies. So if you have a poster from anything that's been made, I guess, prior to 2019, he could probably sign it. Oh, and he's in Clone Wars too, because he does the voice of 3PO. So kind of everywhere.
And I can't imagine him being brought to Celebration with the way things are at the moment not for a particular reason. So I wouldn't be surprised to see his involvement announced in a couple of other projects,
or at least in a panel or something.
Yeah.
And you have to think with the 50th looming, 2027, the 50th anniversary. I remember the 40th in in Orlando, and just like what a build up that was to 40 years of Star
Yeah.
Wars. Like we're getting ready for the 50th of Star Wars. What do they have planned? Like in theory, there's a new movie coming. Um, I don't know what else is on
On the
Lucasfilm's
horizon.
plans, but anyone who's from the OT, you want to have them included in stuff and keep them top of mind for people to talk about like the legacy of the franchise. Next up on the list, again, we're going alphabetically. Ashley Eckstein. She's obviously Ahsoka Tano in Clone Wars and Rebels. She brought that character to life the first time around. Now Rosario Dawson is playing Ahsoka in live action, but Ashley really like invented this character with Dave Filoni, and of course, she's also the head of her universe, possibly the most important licensee when it comes to especially keeping Star Wars alive in the women's side of the fandom. There wasn't anything for women and girls prior to this company. Basically, I couldn't believe like just the impact that her universe has had over the last like 10-15 years. And as she says all the time, it started with a t-shirt, and now it is a global conglomerate essentially, and she's still doing the circuit, meeting people everywhere, and she's involved. She's done the audiobooks for Ahsoka and other things. Like she's kind of everywhere.
And it's a beautiful signature to have on an item. I know a couple of
Mhm.
people who got the Disney Parks limited edition Ahsoka saber hilts signed,
Mhm.
and it's a nice one to have. But also, again, it opens the door then for more Clone Wars and Rebels
Mhm.
panels.
Yes, more Clone Wars, please.
More
Continue
more
Rebels,
nailed on, I'd
please.
say.
Yeah, I have my conspiracy theory that
Go
she
for it.
wasn't in Ahsoka season one. Is that they're holding her back for something really powerful. And as we pointed at the end of season one of Ahsoka toward Mortis, will she voice the daughter in the live action version, or
In the
be the
Mortis
daughter?
arc.
Yeah, the Mortis daughter of some type, like like true promotion to like godly state. Like, and because I think about like the heaviest of hitters now in Star Wars, and the characters include like Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker. Like Ahsoka has to be in that contention
Yeah.
of like a top tier level character because of Ashley. And yes, now we've turned it over to live action, and Rosario has the ball and she's running with it. Like we do that all the time. Multiple people play characters all the time in Star Wars, whether there's an animated person who does the voice in a live action, a Lego version, and a video game version, and there's all these different iterations of the character. But I think Ashley and Ahsoka, especially with Filoni at the helm, will find their way into a higher state. And so
I
maybe she'll be there for that, to talk about joining Ahsoka live action.
I don't think it's outside the realm of the possibility that we may not see more animated Ahsoka
Hmm.
as time goes on. I think there's plenty of room and growth for something like that, maybe a limited series. I mean, we've seen the success of Tales of the Jedi and Tales of the Empire and sort of limited series like that, how popular they've been. So
Yep.
I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility that we could see her play again. I would love it. I would like to see what happened right after she left the Jedi Order during the Clone Wars from an animated perspective, because they
Yep.
could probably do a heck of a lot more than they can live action as things stand. So
Mhm.
maybe
That
that's a
walkabout period.
yeah.
There were some animatics from that in that Clone Wars box set that originally came out after they thought the series was canceled the first go round, and there's definitely some interesting stories there.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. Look, I do want more Ahsoka, but I don't want too much Ahsoka. And I realize that that level is different for everyone. I
Quality
think
over
she was a
quantity.
little, yeah, and she was a little overexposed for a minute, but I think also everyone was pushing back on too much Star Wars and too much like Dave Filoni action figure hour. I don't know if everyone heard that critique that was like making its way around like Twitter, when it was like, "Hey guys, remember this character? He's also here." And like that kind of thing overtook Mando season 2 and Mando season 3, and the connectivity of and people didn't really like Book of Boba Fett. Um, though I feel like Disney has learned a lot from that, and so has Marvel, honestly.
Hmm.
Like the slate is much more manageable for going into 2025. And I think people are just looking for like a really great story to see in theaters. Which is why I keep coming back to like, give us the Grand Admiral Thrawn movie. Like I want to see Heir to the Empire. Like we set up Ahsoka season 1 to send. Yeah, I see what you're wearing. Like this is where we should be headed. If you want to celebrate 50 years of Star Wars in 2027, I demand Heir to the Empire in theaters,
Yeah.
as close as we can get to it based on like this particular I guess, continuity, right? Like if Thrawn and the Witches of Dathomir are going to attack a system of planets, and somehow like who's ever still alive character-wise, including Ahsoka and maybe the ragtag group of rebels and whoever else need to fight these guys, I want to see that. Like, let's make that happen.
Yeah, and it makes me think Tim Zahn will be on this list eventually.
Yes, I do. So as we get into our predictions, I think Tim Zahn is a definite. There are some other big. I feel like also remember it's an anniversary year for Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
I'm still holding out for Ewan, but I realize there's some weird scheduling thing that someone mentioned. He's going to be on the West End doing Broadway or something. Like, I don't know, man, but like you can't not have Hayden. And I think if you bring Hayden for Sith, maybe Natalie will do it now that she's done the Marvel thing. It's just I don't know. So, but we can start speculating, or at least putting out there who we want to be on the list, because like, please don't bring people who have done this show 15 times already and that people don't care about. Like, I think that's a problem. Okay, so Alan, Anthony, Ashley. Next up, only 6 more to go, officially announced. Daniel Logan, who's young Boba Fett. Now, he hits a couple streams of content as well. He's a prequel star. He was in the Clone Wars for an arc, and then he has the sort of cameo appearance in Book of Boba Fett. It makes me wonder, is there something else that he is working on that would necessitate his inclusion, like Mando Season 4 or the Mando movie or something else in the Boba Fett space? Because otherwise, like, his content is a little more, like, he's not celebrating a major anniversary this year with any of his content, but he does go to like all the celebrations, and people also love meeting Daniel Logan. He's just the best.
He's super nice guy. Anytime I've met him, would sign whatever you like, and never afraid of a selfie either if he sees people out and about. Just a super nice guy.
I've had a lot of fun with Daniel Logan. Just like he's someone I knew from my prior work when I was at Tops, and met him at Rhode Island Comic Con and got to like hang out and spend like quality time with him. And he's one of those people where if you get in his line and get an autograph and talk to him, you'll remember that experience. Like, some people, no one on this list that we're going to talk about, but some people, I've been in conventions, it's very transactional. They take your money, they sign their autograph, and you're on your way, and they might not even look up at you. Like, Daniel Logan will make your day. And it doesn't mean it doesn't have a long line of people waiting to meet him, but people are willing to wait in line and meet him because he brings the positivity, and he also brings the fun. If you can hang out with him after hours, find out how. He is just a ton of fun and a really, really good guy. And we brought him to Celebration, I think, in 17 and in 19. And he was like the belle of the green room. Like, everyone wanted to hang out with Daniel because he's like that guy, right? So he's the first invite at the party.
And we're so lucky to have many more people like him in the fandom, thankfully, people who are just genuinely nice people who actually do go out of their way to make fans' days. I know some other fandoms aren't that lucky in some respects, but we are.
Yeah, he's one of the good ones. And so I think you need that dose of positivity, similar to Ashley, right? Like, Ashley somehow, I think she secretly has a photographic memory. She knows everyone's name. Like, I hadn't seen her in years because of my, leaving Tops and going to Ruby's, and we were catching up at Rhode Island Comic Con. She remembered shit from 7 years ago that she was bringing. I was like, how are you doing this? Like, she's a superwoman. And she makes you feel like you're the most important person in there. She was talking to 20 of us at once. You would have thought it was like a one-on-one meet and greet that I had paid $1,000 for, and we were just catching up for like all of 2 minutes, right?
She can
that
command
level of she's able to make you feel at home, and that she wants to be there with you. And Daniel's the same way. And they bring a very different energy, but it is both in the very positive experience space. So yeah, I'm thrilled that Ashley and Daniel are there, like, specifically for the energy they're going to bring to the environment. All right, next up, this might be my favorite on the list. Not that I play favorites, only because he's been so elusive, and it's the hottest thing that's coming in 2025. I think Diego Luna.
Yeah. And Andor is the one that we've all been waiting on. That was the blueprint. That was the one that I think restored a lot of people's faith in the Disney machine in terms of Star Wars.
Yeah, I loved it. Loved Andor so much. We still quote it. People just scream one way out at each other. Like, the show just left behind this like specific writing brilliance that like sticks with you. The fight the Empire / F the Empire. The idea that like you have to fight fascism and you have to try, which I say all the time, like, flies right in the face of all the Jedi teachings. Like, if nothing else, you have to try. Climb has become a thing. Like, and I realize I'm grabbing like little particular quotes, but like the way that show functioned as an arc and gave every single character their moments, and showed like everyday people doing their damnedest and not even knowing if they were going to succeed. It goes to that big metaphor of like planting the tree but not seeing the shade. Like that's what every single person in the show is doing. So
And
I'm excited to
provided a
see it
lot of
come back.
cosplay opportunities as well. There were a
Yes.
lot from the prison scene.
Yes. In fact, I shouldn't say this, but it'll be public soon enough. Denuo Novo is working on like a really accurate version of that, because the ones that are floating around are okay. We have the patterns and everything, and we're actively working on that. So I'm excited to get some cosplay ready for the Narkina 5 prisoners, as it were. I love that look. I think it's very easy to wear. Although, put on your shoes, damn it. If I see another like, and they told people they had to wear shoes, and people did not care, and all these men running around with their gross feet all over the floor of London, I was horrified. I was like, I hope they all trip. I was not having it. But
You know,
Diego, go ahead.
I was gonna say, what surprised me is when we see the Wilrow Hood run. I'm surprised there hasn't been one of those from the
You know,
prison scene.
yeah, you know how things come in these cycles now, right? Like, what's going to be the next thing? Like,
Yeah.
no one could have predicted the prison run from Narkina 5, or that One Way Out would become this like rallying cry of an entire fan base. It just, you can't predict those things. And every time you try to make it happen, it doesn't happen. Like the Yord Horde thing became a thing organically, and then Lucasfilm actually responded pretty quickly, being like, yes, Yord Horde hashtag. And then there was like stickers and merch and stuff. You can't manufacture those types of things. And so I don't know what's going to happen next. Like even like what was it, Neil Nation? They got ahead of that because they knew he was going to be cute, but like it's not quite Yord Horde level in terms of like the fanaticism from
Not
the
yet.
fandom. Yeah, hopefully
It could be.
it'll. Yeah, it certainly could. I am curious to see like what will be the big gathering group, because I miss the ice cream buckets. Like I love that. I love running around with the ice cream. Like that's fun. But I'm curious to see like, would it be a big giant group of Mandos doing something at the, I don't know what the big group cosplay thing is going to be in Japan.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, but I'm very, very excited about Diego. He never signs autographs. He's done a couple of appearances here and there. Tons of people probably have Felicity and other people, other big names, including Mads Mikkelsen, on their posters that need to add Diego to their Rogue One and now their Andor. He can make a fortune if he just sat there and signed every autograph that people wanted. He could leave a multimillionaire multiple times over just from people needing to add him to Rogue One posters, Andor posters, selfies, 8x10s. Like he'll make bank. He will clean up at the show, and he could just sit there for 5 straight days and sign autographs. There's no end in sight on that one.
And you know what? Soak at this next guy, because this is my number one guest.
He's your number one pick on here, right? Yeah.
He was my goal to meet at Celebration London, and I did, and I broke a lot of stuff because I dropped bags because he literally walked right by me. So I got myself beat, and I got back up. So this is the one for me.
Excellent. So tell us why you love Doug Chang, because I think we, the deeper cut fans, he's not an actor, and so I feel like the fans know who he is, but there's probably people who are attending Celebration very excited to see like a Manny Jacinto or someone who might not know who Doug Chang is.
This is the guy. The easiest way to describe it is this is the guy that Star Wars and George Lucas's blood and DNA run through. This is somebody who has, I suppose you want to say, been there from the get-go when Star Wars became this incredible machine, and he learned from the best of the best, learning from George, working very closely with Dave. So at the moment he's the SVP, isn't he? He's the senior vice president, and he's one of the executive designers. And anyone who attended his panel at Celebration in London would have just been blown away by the work that he did. I mean, just somebody who is ineptly good at what he does. And for me, that was the best panel at Celebration that year. Were you lucky enough to see it, or were you?
I was working. Yeah, I worked all of Celebration London, so my fun was mostly in the after hour space, but I heard it was good. I did see a lot of the panels made it to YouTube, and I watched a chunk of them like weeks later. They all blend. But yeah, Doug is excellent, and I do think he's like the dark horse on this list of like who might have the longest line. Like if you ask me right now who had the longest line, you can make the case for Diego, you can make the case for Manny. I think Ashley then has a fair shot, but I think Doug it might be the guy who sells the most tickets out of this list.
For me at the moment, if I was spending money on an autograph, that would be the one I
Mhm.
would be going for, because correct me if I'm wrong, has he done many signings outside of this? I don't think
No.
so.
I want to say we had him in a top set as a creator, like for a second, but I can't even remember anymore because we were chasing so many people, and
Mhm.
that job is also getting further and further away from me in my, in my memory. And I'm like, did we ever get Doug? I feel like we did. I'd have to check. Um, Also, I don't know what they're going to price him at. Like, is he someone who you price at $50 or $100? Because there are people who really want him who would pay $100, and then there are other people who'd be like, I don't know who this guy is. I wouldn't pay 20. And that's no shade to him. It's that he's not an on-screen talent, right? And so the creators often don't get the same booking, but the people who know them actually think they're more valuable
Yeah.
than, say, a guest voice on a show, right?
And also, with you mentioning the sort of who will have the longest lines, bear in mind, isn't the Macahari Mesa like double the size of the XL Centre in London? So
It's big.
there's going to be a lot more real estate to play with in terms of how many people they can actually get through those doors.
Yeah. I don't remember the square footage of all the different places. I thought Orlando was gigantic. When I was there in 2017, I was like, holy crap, like this place is a city block, like, or a city mile, like in each direction, right? Like it is a gigantic convention center.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing that Japan is bigger. So um, that's insane to me. Because also, I think people think this is supposed to be like a small show. And I do think we need to get into this as we finish up on the talent. What exhibitors are going to be at the show? Because I can tell you a lot of licensees either can't sell in Japan or simply aren't planning on going because it doesn't make sense
Hmm.
in terms of financials. So I'm curious as to how this small show is going to fill the giant convention center in Japan. If it's going to be more real estate than Orlando, I don't think that many people are attending, or that many exhibitors are attending, or that many actors are attending to fill that space. So maybe you'll actually have some breathing room. That'll be nice.
It would be as well. And obviously, things run a little bit differently in Japan than they would in the States in terms
That's
of
true.
etiquette and things like that. So that's going to
Yes.
be something to discuss later down the line.
My understanding is that in regards to etiquette, they have it. And so we as Americans, as we get over there, let's try not to burn down their city, people. Um, I understand that there are some weirdly specific cultural things about cosplay. And so you're not really supposed to cosplay in the street.
Traveling with your
Um,
costume on public
yeah,
transport or things like that. Yeah.
right. And so these types of like, they're not laws, but they're guidelines and mores and sort of recommendations. I do think we'll do a show on that, not today.
Yeah.
But like, I do think there needs, and I would rather bring on like an expert who
Yeah.
can really speak eloquently about this as opposed to me saying, I don't think you're supposed to wear your cosplay. Like, there are some specifics to this that we need to really get into because I
Hmm.
want everyone who goes over there to like represent the network well, to represent our country well, and to represent the Star Wars fandom well while we're over there, as opposed to like, I don't want to see on the news like stupid American like destroys something in Japan. Like it'll happen inevitably, but
I
let's try
think
to get ahead of it.
I'm suspecting the contingent is probably going to be just as big from Europe.
Probably, yeah. I think this might be the one show. Like, if you were doing a slice of, they always do a pie chart of like who attended from around the world, and it's always like America 75%, and then like Europe 20% or whatever it is, and then everywhere else, right? I think this one will be a 50-50
A little
split
bit
of like
closer.
Europe,
Yeah, I agree.
yeah,
Yeah.
Europe to America, and then of course like you always have your local contingent, and I'm hearing people from Australia, which makes a lot of sense. That's a straight flight north, right? I guess
Yeah.
you can get from Australia to Japan in a couple hours. That's pretty easy. So that's exciting. Yeah, we'll have to do a breakdown. We'll have to make some. We have to make some bets, and we need to start now, like
Yeah.
within the next couple weeks.
Hmm.
Who do we think is going to be on the guest list? Who do we think is going to be on the exhibitor list? And then what do we think the breakdown is going to be? Um, regarding attendees and stuff.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I did want to acknowledge Bruce's comments in the chat because it sounds like Gary that he also is a big fan of Doug Chang, and so Bruce said he's managed to get a photo um, at the last a random photo at the last three celebrations at London. It was at the last day, right as the announcement was being made that they were leaving. So you caught him like just on the ground. Not going to be the case this year. He will have I guess,
A Praetorian Guard.
yeah, possibly some type of imperial officer escorting him around because now he's known. Like I remember someone else told me they got a photo with him just on the floor and it's like Doug Chang was just walking around and they're like, "Oh yeah, he's not recognizable enough. He could just be some guy." And I'm like, "I guess that's true, but I know what he looks like." So
Yeah.
but now he will have a firewall and a paywall at that. So, but either way, the nice thing is there's a guaranteed way to go meet Doug Chang now. So
Yeah.
go buy his autographs. I'm assuming too actual autograph tickets will go on sale in the next couple weeks. I assume by the end of January, because we're going to need 3 months for everyone to print their photos, gather their things they want to send. I don't know if they're doing send-ins ahead of time. And if they are, it's international shipping. Like this is a whole logistical thing. And I remember going through this the 2 times I was working at Celebration, and it takes so much effort and getting people to sign contracts ahead of time, committing to going, figuring out what photos we're going to bring. Running a send-in is a giant pain in the ass,
Oh yeah.
and it always pisses off people, especially when they have multiple people want to sign things. Imagine you send in your send-in because you want Diego Luna to sign something, and then you find out that Mads Mikkelsen is also there, and you're like, well, how do I get them both on that item that I already mailed for Diego? And then that's an email. 600 other people had that same question and have now emailed the one person probably answering that email 600 emails. Like this is what creates like the ripple. So
And that's a great example for anybody who's going to their first celebration. Write down your ideals for every single day, what you would like to do, your dream scenarios, and then rip that page up because unfortunately with the way logistics go, everyone else is thinking the exact same thing you are.
yeah.
So unfortunately it ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, like right now, if I were building a cast piece, Alan Tudyk, Diego Luna, and Mads Mikkelsen live squarely on your Rogue One poster, and so does technically Anthony Daniels.
Yeah.
Like he's in that movie as well. If you're doing a prequel era, and I guess in this case, particularly Attack of the Clones, Tamora Morrison and Daniel Logan. If you're doing
Yeah.
Clone Wars, Ashley Eckstein, Anthony Daniels, Daniel Logan. Like there's some slices that you can start making here, and to your point, create the dream scenario and then be ready to adjust
Yeah.
of what it is. So, okay, let's continue down the list. After Doug Chang, who seems to be the dark horse for the #1 slot, we have Mads Mikkelsen, who's also someone who doesn't do the convention circuit super frequently, but he's been out there certainly more than Diego, but I would say is also an A-level, like an A-lister,
Yeah.
both in
Big
Hollywood
time.
and within Star Wars. For again, he played Galen Erso. I hope they announce Lars Mikkelsen too. He's got to tell his brother, "Come on, man, what are we doing? We got one Mikkelsen and not the other."
Could you do? Is there a way to work a Galen/Thrawn photo in some shape or form?
Right, like the Mikkelsen brothers, I'd jump in that photo. I'm sure
Yeah.
they've met. Like Galen obviously met Thrawn. If Thrawn knows Krennic, there we go. We're 2 degrees of separation away. Disney's weird about that though. They probably won't. If those characters don't make sense, there won't be a dual photo op for that.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the K word. One of my dark horses for this is Ben. Ben Mendelsohn.
Oh, gotcha. Yes. I would love to have Ben Mendelsohn do a show. I think with Andor season 2 happening and some of these actors coming in from Rogue One to those roles, like it would make sense to have any of them, right? You want Saw Gerrera, you want Forrest Whitaker.
Yeah.
Is Felicity Jones going to pop in? I don't know. That would be cool though. I wouldn't be mad if it was like a largely Andor Rogue One cast list.
Yeah, that'd be pretty sweet. Again, they were some of the projects where the blueprint worked. That was
exactly
to a lot of people that was Star Wars.
Brad has a question for you, Gary. I think that's for you, Gary, not a Gary within the Star Wars signing universe, but that might be for Gary O'Toole.
Great question, Brad. And actually, this year I have actually decided that I will not be attending. The reason being that for those of us in Europe, the yen to the euro the last while has actually been terrible. So when you look at the overall costs for a 3-day event, for me, it just wasn't worth it. Now, this is something that myself and Mark had talked about with being a 3-day event and being so far away is a point of contention for a lot of people. If this had been maybe a 5-day event, you could have gone, okay, maybe it's justifiable. But when you think about the costings in terms of travel, and bear in mind for a lot of us in Europe, there may, depending on where you live, there may not be a lot of direct flights to Japan. So you may have to have multiple stopovers or layovers, which is going to increase the cost. Then imagine you end up going somewhere where you're 12, 18 hours waiting for a layover to catch a second flight to your destination. It's going to increase the cost significantly. So for me, unfortunately, it's not one that I feel was worth the cost at this point. Now, there are multiple people who will be going from Europe, so there will be a full contingent there, as we were saying. But for me, I don't know if there's anybody else from Europe who's watching who is attending or not attending. How much of a consideration was the cost when you compare the euro to the yen?
Hmm. That's totally fair. I'm not attending either. And actually, one of the reasons I'm doing the news desk is I will be your on-site news correspondent for the VCN during celebration. It is a long way to travel. I've attended most celebrations as a worker, not an attendee, and work is definitely not sending me to this one. And so it just doesn't make sense for me to go on this trip. I have other travel planned throughout the year. I'll definitely make it to 27 for the 50th, whatever's happening there. So uh, I'm thrilled to like be on air every day, all 4 nights or whatever. However, we're going to cover it, 4 to 5 nights celebration coverage here on the network, and in constant contact via WhatsApp to everyone who's going to be boots on the ground at celebration. So, so Gary and I will be keeping the home fires burning, as they were.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have 3 more people we need to talk about. Actually, we talked about Mads, 2 more people. Manny Jacinto, our only announced actor from The Acolyte so far, and the person who I think I would say might be in contention for MVP of like 2025 from Star Wars as the Stranger. I thought he kicked all the ass. And Lucasfilm really lightning struck with this man.
Yeah, and I think he's somebody who they would be able to call back for multiple roles because he is very, very talented and incredibly versatile, playing 2 characters all at once. And I think his performances were a particular highlight of The Acolyte, although depending on how people feel about it, that wasn't exactly a difficult task considering, but each to their own on that front. But I think he did a fantastic job, and I think there are a lot of people that will like to add his autograph to their list.
Yeah, without a doubt. He's one of the newest additions to the Star Wars family. He's sort of just getting his roses. He's been in so many little things that he's been on the cusp of like breaking out. Like I always tell people, go watch The Good Place. He's so good. He's also like the 5th build person on that show, right? Like it's the kind of thing where he's got sort of these breakout roles because he's not carrying every episode. He's not like the 2 leads. He's not Ted Danson. That being said, like I would think he's probably one of people's favorite characters in The Good Place. And then he was in Top Gun for a hot second. Like he's done all these things where he's like just there. And I was like, can someone please re-release Top Gun Maverick with more of the Manny Jacinto footage? Like that would be the right answer right now, like because he's having such a moment. I don't know what they'll price him at, but I think that he'd be a relatively expensive ticket. I also think that if you're bringing him, God, you can't not
The
bring
rest of the cat,
Amandla, or at least
yeah,
like it's a tough one because, like to your point, the the menace response was terrible. But I think people who are attending Celebration will be open-minded and attend uh, an Acolyte panel, and they probably want to meet Amandla and maybe some of the other women. This is very specifically like a mostly women show. And so right now it's weird that like one man has been selected to be the guy, but he's also like, I'm telling you, the MVP of not just that show, but I think of 2025 in general. I do hope they round out the rest of the Acolyte cast and at least bring like 2 or 3 more people. Like you got to bring Amandla, and I think you've got to bring
Eunice, maybe somebody like that.
I think you bring a couple. I think you bring Yord, and I think you bring Jackie. People love her anyway from Deadpool, Wolverine, and from Logan. I'm
And
blanking on her name, but like you bring
Daphne would
her,
be a
Daphne.
Daphne
Yes,
Queen.
I don't know. I'm gotten worse and worse with like actor names and character names, and I'm like that girl from that thing. And that's how I can tell I'm old now. But yes, I think you bring Daphne, and you bring the guy who played Yord, and you bring one more Jedi. Or Mandla, right? And you're good, and that covers the Acolyte.
Yeah, I think they have to bring a couple more. It would seem very stacked that the Acolyte would only have somebody flying solo within it. So I agree. I think at least 2 or 3 more cast members could pop along.
Hmm. Last up on the list was Tamora Morrison, who I would say at this point he's our Boba Fett. We've had a lot of people play Boba Fett over the course of the many years since the OT. We have Dickie Beer. We had several of them at our event over the summer at the VCN Special Edition Boon to Eve. This time around, in the latest time period in which Boba Fett exists, which is this Mando-verse
The
timing.
Mandoverse, yeah.
Yeah, it is Tamora. So he's Jango Fett, and now he is Boba Fett, and I think we'll see him again in whether it be the Mandalorian movie or the inevitable Grand Admiral Thrawn movie. Like Boba Fett is never going away. Um, so I think I would love for them to add Ming Na Wen to bring the duo home because I think she elevated him. Like I think that Ming Na Wen was the MVP of that series. And so I think having her would be a huge win, especially since she's a Disney legend and she seems to be universally beloved. No matter what she does, people are like, yes, Ming Na Wen, add her to the stack.
And she was the cavalry in Shield. That's just as good as it. That's just as good as it gets.
Yeah. I'm excited to see Tamora though, because I also think the prequels get no love, and look, I'm not a huge fan of the prequels, but I know that there's a whole generation of kids that it's their favorite thing. And with it being the anniversary of Sith, it's almost like the anniversary of the end of the prequel era.
Yeah.
And the prequel era content seems to be influencing a lot of what we're doing. Like Ahsoka is a prequel era character. Is part of the Clone Wars, which is an extension of the prequels, and now there's a live action show. Like that influence is going to continue. So I think we need to have those people represented at the show, especially as we're losing more and more original trilogy people too. Like, how do you build out a 50th anniversary celebration when there's no one left from 1977? Like, you have to look at the longevity of the entire franchise. You're not going back to 77. You're celebrating all 50 years, right?
And also, it is a case where we know the fandom has to move forward.
Exactly. And I like the prequel time period, and there's a lot to do there. And I think having this mix of people from it, with Ashley, with Tamora, with Daniel, like there's a lot to mine with those characters, and I think there's more that could be done. After Clone Wars, we got Bad Batch, so I realize that's technically Empire time period, but like I would love to see D. Bradley Baker and Michelle Ang pop in to represent Bad Batch. Like that would be cool.
I can't imagine D not being there in some shape or form.
Yeah.
That would seem. I think what was it? I was chatting to one of the guys last night, and we were saying that we think D will probably be one that would be asked to pop along, but I think if ever there was a time for a live action Cal Kestis, can we just have Cameron Monaghan and have him?
Yeah, especially if they're going to announce the third video game, right? Like have him announce the game, and then by the way, we've added him for a PR signing, even if you can't do like a sold thing or whatever. And I love Cameron Monaghan. I brought him on as an autograph signer when I was at Topps, and I got multiple people from the Jedi Fallen Order game to sign, including Deborah Wilson, who I love from Mad TV. Like, I mean, I love that lady, and she was delightful. I think that there's a whole that's in there's so many streams of content now. That it gets into like, who are we bringing, who are we not bringing, what streams do we want to invest in? I think Cameron makes a lot of sense. He's also a very popular cosplayer. Like there's so many guys, especially if you have red hair. Damn, it's like every redhead decided they were just going to build that armor and get a little BD droid and they're on their way. Like it's wild.
And if you remember from Gotham when Jerome Valeska was first revealed, everyone was doing it.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where he's got legs. So I think with that in mind, knowing who we have now, what's missing from this list largely is anything new trilogy. I don't see Daisy, I don't see Oscar, I don't see John, I don't see anyone from the new trilogy. And while I know there's supposedly a Daisy Ridley movie in the works, I'll believe it when I see it. It was already bumped, which never made sense to begin with. Like it shouldn't have been in the same year as the 2026 Mando movie to begin with. Now it's been bumped to the May 2027 date. I do not think that will hold. I think that movie slot will become the Grand Admiral Thrawn movie, Heir to the Empire, and then you bump out the Daisy Ridley movie to make it make more sense in 28 or 29 or whenever. But like, I think you need to bring people from the new trilogy to remind everyone that that's what Disney did first when they got this franchise, and Daisy better be there, at least for PR. But Daisy, John, Oscar, someone from the new trilogy better be signing autographs at this thing.
Yeah, and I think a big consideration as well is that the focus for such a long time has been on the small screen, because when it's come to that platform, they've gotten it right a heck of a lot more than they have on the big screen, maybe Rogue One aside. So
Yeah,
they have to balance it out. I mean, for a lot of people, whether we like it or not, the big screen blockbusters, the movies, that's Star Wars to them. And,
exactly.
your Star Wars is your Star Wars. But, I mean, the amount of projects that were supposed to have been greenlit and cancelled, or maybe never got. I mean, I saw something the other day, again, people querying the Patty Jenkins movie. Is it not? Is it not? And
hmm
so much
I
toing and froing.
assume everything is not. And I think that's the concern, right? So
Yeah.
I think we need to start announcing things when it's already deep in production, not in development. Those are two very different things. So with that being said, I think the guest list will depend on one, who's willing to go to Japan, and what streams of content they want to promote, and what is legitimately in production versus a pipe dream. Um, and so for that, I think it would be fun right now for us to
Yep.
pick one that we think is going to happen, and one that we wish will happen but likely won't. Um, I'm going to go first with, I think Hayden will happen. Hayden, after we brought him back in 2017 at Tops, like, he seems to have done these pretty frequently, and actually does a number of shows on his own, and is an A-level person to celebrate Revenge of the Sith. He's come back for the Ahsoka show. You have to assume he'll be in Ahsoka season 2. You're not going to waste that. Him in the Clone Wars armor was such a moment. I think he is a doable get, even though he's like A-lister. Like, I think you get him, and then you have him do photos with Rosario. I think Rosario will be there also, unless there's like a filming schedule conflict. But at that point, it's like, it's your own damn house. Like, bump the filming. So I think that Anakin will be there in the form of Hayden. I also think Matt will be there to sell. I think Matt Lanter will be there
Matt
as well.
Lanter.
But
Yeah, I
I
think
think
Lanter will be
Hayden,
there.
yeah. So I think Hayden Christensen, and then I would love for them to get Amidala herself, Natalie Portman. I think that is the white whale would be. Oh, Brad just said it. Yeah, Natalie Portman. I'm going to put this up to have signings with Hayden, and I think she would do it if he were there, or if Ewan were there. I think you have to make her safe in a way that, like, and feels like other people are into it as well. And that's my hope.
Yeah, no, I agree. But before we're sending, speaking of the mention again of Revenge of Sith, I'm sure everyone has seen the anniversary logo that has been put up and is doing the rounds online. In terms of merch, I think that's going to be one of the biggest pushes you're going to see. There's going to be some highly desirable collectibles at Celebration around that.
Oh, I agree. There's going to be so much celebrating all things prequel for Revenge of the Sith. It's going to be very cool.
For me, one that I think will likely happen, we've probably already mentioned it, is I think Cameron is probably going to be nailed on, but I do think, bless you. I do think Lars will be the one. I think it would be crazy not to, because if you remember, was it the interview when Filoni was asked how was Ahsoka season 2 going? He's like, I'm the only one writing it. So I think it's centralized around. It would be crazy not to have Lars there.
Yeah, I agree. You got to have Lars. I need to add him to my Rebels poster. Not that I'm going to get there, but yeah, I love Lars Mikkelsen.
You'll find somebody who will.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. The Admiral has to land.
Yeah. So who are you wanting, but's likely not gonna be there? Who's your go-to?
Oh, Natalie for sure.
Oh, you think Natalie is the one that we won't get?
Yeah, agreed. I would love her to be there. They're never going to get her. What's your take on that?
Again, I would love to see it, but the fact that she's already done the kind of Marvel thing, will that smooth things over and provide more avenues for her to be able to come back into this world? I mean, a lot of people probably said we could have never gotten Hayden back, and it happened. So stranger things have happened in that sense, I guess. I think, for me, I think the one that everybody would love to see after everything that's gone on, now that he's finished Indy, he will probably have a lot more time to do it, would be Harrison. But I can't imagine he would. I suppose we could say the same thing for Mark. That I think the two of them for a while just.
I think Mark will be there.
You think so? He'll be on the list?
Possibly. I mean, Official Picks is doing the lineup, right? So it's more likely than not likely. I don't know about Harrison. I don't think you'll ever get Harrison to do
No.
a paid thing, but maybe he'll show up on a panel for the 50th. So tune back in 2027, kids. I think that's the closest you'll get. Now, with that in mind, we are just about at time, but I did want to point out two things. They've announced 2 exhibitors so far for the show, Hasbro and Hot Toys. I assume Lego will also be
Both
there.
expected.
Yeah, I mean, no surprises there. I also think 2 of them are doing interesting stuff right now. The Hasbro Ghost was a big hit. Other Hasbro stuff has been up and down, is the nicest way to say it. Hot Toys, I think, is one that like is just on an upswing and will not stop. Like everyone loves a hot toy. I think that that space is really, weirdly enough, I think Hasbro and Hot Toys, like Hot Toys is where action figures and collectibles are headed, and Hasbro is where things were. And so Hasbro is chasing the Hot Toys market, right?
I'm still just waiting to open my Hot Toys Grand Admiral Thrawn.
Yeah, bring that to get signed if Lars says yes, right? Like this, that's the kind of thing that would be an excellent signature. But we will keep everyone posted on the exhibitor list as it starts becoming more public. We did want to just remind everyone about our event that is happening. Not that you can get tickets, because at this point, Not So has sold out. Yeah, our event on Thursday, which is the day before celebration really starts, 7 and 10 p.m., the Not So Virtual Cantina Meetup, has been sold out very quickly in like 4 minutes on Facebook. It's kind of crazy. We're so excited that so many of you are looking forward to spending time with us halfway around the world, or I guess all the way around the world. We're as far away as possible from New York City. If you're a New Yorker, like Japan is literally as far as you can be away from us. Like it's crazy. So it is amazing. So many people are going to spend their time with us over in celebration. And of course, we have to thank our sponsor, Hyperspace Props. You can get all of your sabak needs and everything else. They do a lot of other stuff, but I think people know them best for their sabak chips and everything else. You can save 10% on your order with NSVCSE. That's Not So Virtual Cantina Special Edition. That's what those letters mean. So that really covers everything we wanted to hit on our first show, talk a lot about the guests, a little bit about the general show. As a reminder, Japan, April 18th through the 20th. Several people from from our celebration Facebook group, our VCN channel, will be there. Gary and I will be here holding things down as your news correspondents. And of course, you can tune into our show as we go through this bi-weekly at the moment, but will become weekly pretty soon to give you updates on all the news as announced by Lucasfilm. So as soon as they have something meaningful to say, so will we. I think that covers everything for this week. Anything else we need to mention, Gary?
No, I suppose if anybody is tuning in for the first time or you're not part of the group over on Facebook, make sure you get over there and join up. What are we soon to be approaching 70, 80,000?
Yeah, we're over 70,000 members.
Yeah.
And of course, follow all of our social channels as well. We'll continue to post news on our Facebook, Instagram. We're still posting on X for now. God, we're on Hive. That's a moment in time, isn't it? But Virtual Cantina will be your celebration resource, especially the Facebook page. And we'll be turning over to celebration specific news only, I think, in March. So more to come on that. But as a reminder, only 104 days to go for Star Wars Celebration, and the news will start coming fast and furious from Lucasfilm, at which point we will be jumping on that. And you may find us just jumping in with like, hey, big announcement, guys. And then Star Wars celebrating autographs will be returning to the channel as well with Frank at the helm. So more to come on that front, and we'll get into the nitty gritty of every person attending, how much they're going to charge, what items you can get signed by them, sort of like what we did for the Boonta Special Edition stuff.
Yeah, and if anybody hasn't gotten to tune in while this was live, anybody who's watching back, if anybody has any questions or any topics that we didn't get to, drop us a message in the comments, and we'll do our best to get the message out.
Yeah, send us a message in the chat. We'll make sure to reply. All right. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in this week. Be sure to check out all of the other programming on the Virtual Cantina Network. And as always, we will see you in the next show, which is 2 weeks from today on the 18th. But before then, as always, may the Force be with you.